You can share the slides if you need, if you want to.
Okay, I'm not going to share some slides.
Yes.
But what I'll do is I'll just say some prayers and then we'll go from there. Okay, Magiana Tamaranda Syagya Nanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chikapati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I want to begin by saying thank you to all of you for joining the call today. As always, we want to begin by offering our humble obeisances to His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj, who's very kindly engaged us in this service for our own purification, to really request, first of all, from Maharaj, but also from all the devotees, for mercy, for grace, so that we can speak something that is edifying to the soul, that will uplift us and that will help us on our journey in Krishna consciousness. So I understand that we are going through the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, this Bhagavad Gita being a conversation that took place 5,000 years ago in a place called Kurukshetra. This fratricidal war, a war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And it is a very beautiful series of verses, these 700 or so verses that constitute the Bhagavad Gita, because within the themes of these chapters, within the book as a whole, the teaching as a whole, we have everything that we need to become perfected. Not just everything that we need to become perfected, but also given in a way which is very progressive and which gives us very deep laws of spiritual life. So what we want to talk about is a summary of this third chapter. I'm going to begin by giving you an acronym. So this can help us to really hold on to the understanding. So 4 letters and 1 word. The word is tree, T-R-E-E. So T stands for Tyag, right? So this idea of really austerity or renunciation. Actually, I'll come back to the R. E stands for example, the importance of being an example in everything that we do. The last E stands for enemy. The main enemy that we have in this world is the enemy of lust. And Arjuna is being given some real understanding about the importance of staying away from this enemy. The R stands for rung, R-U-N-G. So rung as in rungs of the yoga ladder, different stages or levels of the yoga ladder. So T-R-E-E, Tyag, which means renunciation, R for rungs of the yoga ladder, E for example, and the last E for enemy. So we're going to touch upon these 4 different key ideas or themes of this third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And we'll try and go through the flow of the verses to try and touch upon some key, as we said, key laws of spiritual life. What I will do is I will share my screen. Just going to do that in a moment. So we can actually see the verses and also see the flow in which this chapter is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So my computer's a little bit slow. Actually, while it's doing that, I'll just say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. While my computer's loading, I'll just start speaking about some of the key ideas that are being given here. Okay, so this chapter begins in a very, very instructive way. And again, we know that our teachings, because the teachings of Krishna consciousness, the Shastra, is this descending process. Therefore, everything is layered with deep meaning. And therefore, as we go through Bhagavad Gita, we should always be in the mood of asking with a mood of humble curiosity, why? Why are things laid out the way that they are? Why is this chapter presented the way that it is? I think my screen is going to come up, or I think the verse is going to come up in a moment. This verse, or rather, this chapter, it begins with the admittance by Arjuna of bewilderment. In fact, Arjuna asked Krishna a specific question. So he'll say to Krishna, why do you actually want me to fight? So let's go right to the top. Can you see the screen first of all? Let's just check. Yeah? Okay, excellent. So it begins with a question. This in of itself is very significant for all of us. When people think about religion and spiritual paths generally, in many cases, without meaning to, what they're taught is to blindly follow. What we see in the pages of Bhagavad Gita is completely the opposite. We see this very intelligent pursuit of the truth with a view towards surrendering to that truth. And so this whole chapter, it begins with Arjuna's question to Krishna, because Arjuna's not sure why he's being asked to fight. And moreover, he's saying, if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive activity or fruitive work, and Arjuna is thinking this fighting is just fruitive work, then why are you asking me to do something which is less of a lesser caliber? And Arjuna, he's saying something which is exactly the human condition. In that second verse, he's saying, I don't know what to do. I'm bewildered. Right? And what does he do therefore? He says, please tell me decisively. So I'm unclear. Please give me with great clarity and in a very conclusive way exactly what I'm meant to do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important, because what is being given here is Arjuna's desire to be confident in activity, right? Karma yoga, right? The yoga of action, to be confident in activity by having a very clear and conclusive understanding about what he should do. Krishna is now, what does he begin by doing? He says, I've already explained something, that there are two classes of people. And then he's building on that understanding. This is really important. As a principle in our teachings, it is just like any good educational institution. Back to when you were at school. For example, when you learned maths, they didn't give you the highest level of understanding straight away. They started with the foundation and then they built on that foundation. Sometimes as devotees, when we don't understand the importance of this systematic, and we then come crashing and bewildered. For reaction, they had some health issue because they weren't sufficiently active. Isn't that interesting? It's one of the laws of life. For something to function properly, it has to be engaged. Then they get back problems, health properly. right? He says it's better to be destroyed while doing your own. People have different natures. If someone's young, when they're in a young body, there's so much passion, so much energy in the body. Where's all that youthful passion go? It goes into my living being who is a spirit soul, Dehinos Minyata Dehi, right? Not the body, but actually Nitya Krishna Das. If each and every one of us, because we're, and that is the story of the material existence. The story of the material existence is that because we're not, Krishna is explaining that we can't virtually, there was a class, I think we're constantly thinking about that, an attachment. They become attached to it. And Krishna has already explained from that attachment art. So our process of Krishna consciousness is not a process of hearing the truth. It is a process of real. So Krishna was explained, one would certainly delude. See, a person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness is considered to be the sixth sense. First, he says, do your duty. So better than inactivity is active. This function, we can think of these verses of the Bhagavad Gita, right? Krishna himself, you have to figure out something else separately. The Bhagavad Gita is the law, just a very natural recognition of how things really are. To close down these slaughterhouses, immediately the weather will change. Extremely towards Krishna and his laws. The circumstances, the environmental patterns of our life, service, alignment, and profoundly auspicious. And by the way, the auspiciousness is always primarily the auspiciousness relates to that. Work done as sacrifice for Vishnu has to be, but everyone finds themselves disturbed and trapped. It is because we've not lost fallacy. Okay? So the way this works, it's actually studying medicine. And in the universities, when you study medicine, it's a long study, whereas most degrees will be 3 years. So someone, okay, so they complete it. And then they think, well, because I studied medicine for 7 years, 7 years worth of study into medicine, if I do something different, the fruits of their activities to Krishna, they would see that actually it's better to cut your losses, leave it alone completely and move on. Completely move on. But this subtle bondage took place. This bondage, when things aren't engaged properly in the service of the Lord, Krishna elaborates on this tyag, this renunciation, this renouncing the fruits. He will talk about the devices for Vishnu. So when the root of the tree by this yajna sacrifice, okay, again, we can map this back to the modern world. People talk about the climate crisis, a lack of resources. And what people think that they're going to do is we'll try and all our troubles came because we tried to adjust the material nature, thinking that we were the doer. The solution is to adjust our nature for trying to lord it over the material world. That's the thing that has to be adjusted. And if we recognize that we can do our activities, but recognize who is the owner of the activities and where should the fruit of the activities be given, that is Krishna. And if we do that, this formula is given directly to each and every one of us, right? Be thou happy by this yajna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily. And look at that. He goes beyond it. He says, not only will you live happily, but you'll be liberated. You'll be free. We'll be free. It is so straightforward that we just might miss it. So we should think that whenever we feel entangled and stuck in this world, we should ask ourselves, to what degree am I offering everything to Krishna? And the fruit or the result of that, the internal reaction, is that we will experience deeper levels of happiness and will become free in that offering of service to Krishna. Okay, so let's move on. Krishna will then talk about this, giving the example of food. 13, the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sin because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So we get reactions again. We become bound to this world simply because we're doing things without recognizing where these things are coming from. Where does this earth come from? So the scientists will talk about how they've discovered something and they've created something. Scientists have made this, but where did the ingredients come from? Whatever you see created, the ingredients came from Mother Nature. Where did Mother Nature come from? She comes from Krishna. The intelligence that was used to put the different elements together to create something, where did that intelligence come from? It came from Krishna, ultimately. Savasya chaham ridishani vishto matasmriti jnanamapohanam cha. Vedescha save aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavid eva chaham. Krishna, he says, from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So not only do the material elements, bhumi apo nala vaya karma nibudhi eva cha, not only does the earth, water, fire, air, ether come from Krishna, Buddhi, the intelligence also comes from Krishna. So therefore, what is being spoken of in this third verse and third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is not an artificial imposition on the mind. What we're being asked to do, and it's a very humble request. Prabhupada said in one place, all Krishna wants you to do is to acknowledge him, is to recognize him. Just like we all have parents. The parents, when we were young, the parents provided everything. They paid for the house. They put food on the table. They paid for the lighting, the electricity, everything. And Krishna, he is a supreme, as he says, the seed-giving father. All that Krishna wants is for us to recognize him. He's providing everything. Even if one is an atheist, still Krishna is providing everything. Is it too much to ask for us to just recognize where everything is coming from and to say thank you? And that thank you, that thank you is in the form of devotional service. So again, this idea of offering back to Krishna that which belongs to Krishna, but with one additional ingredient. And that additional ingredient is love. So that is what we are doing. That is what the life of a devotee is. It is recognizing the truth that everything comes from Krishna, and it is offering everything back to Krishna. That is real karma yoga. Action in Krishna consciousness, action in the service of Krishna. Okay. So then moving on. In this few verses, Krishna is really emphasizing, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, you act as a matter of duty, but by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So he'll talk about different types of karma yoga. Sakam karma yoga, nishkam karma yoga. So in one type of approach to karma yoga, one considers that the fruits are mine, but I'm going to give something to Krishna. Okay? Sakam karma mishra bhakti. So it's mine, but I share with Krishna. In a higher stage of development, one understands actually it was always Krishna's. Right? Everything is always Krishna's. And therefore, it was never mine in the first place, and I offer all of it in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without being attached at the beginning, without being attached in the middle, without being attached in the end. And this is the idea. The idea also, and this is in the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, text number 21, is that we want to be an example. We want to live in the world being an example so that we can communicate not only the truth of Krishna consciousness, but the effect of Krishna consciousness. In this 321, this is a very well-known verse. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And Krishna will go on to say, look, even I do my duty. There's nothing that I don't need to do anything. And as he says in the next verse, yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Even I do my duty myself. So we should understand this is very powerful. So we said T for Tyag, R for rungs of the yoga ladder, right? So Sakam, Nishkam is higher. E for example. Example. The way that we teach is first and foremost by example. This is so important. We want to be the change in the world that we want to see in others. And Krishna will talk about this. Right? He will talk about doing the duties, but he will be so humble as to say, he talks about himself, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds will be put to ruination. I will be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I will thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Very powerful. A very profound statement. He's saying, if I don't act properly, he's implying others would also think, well, Krishna's not acting properly. It's therefore okay for me to act improperly. And that would do what? I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. We have in the world so many people who were unwanted. He says, I will be the cause of creating unwanted population. There's a whole science to this as well. There's a whole science to this. I was listening to a class by my teacher, by my guru, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he was glorifying those who were born in the movement, the youth who were born in the movement. He was saying that they were hearing the holy name when they were in their mother's wombs. And he was explaining how, they have such attachment to the holy name. What we hear in the womb of our mothers, it leaves a very deep samskar. The teachings of Krishna consciousness is so revolutionary. Please do not forget this. The teachings are so revolutionary because they deal with such subtle layers or subtle aspects of existence. If we use the framework given by Jiva Goswami in the Tattva Sandarbha, what is that framework? The Praman, Shabda, Anuman, Pratyaksha. So Shabda is this Bhagavad Gita. Anuman means inference or logic. Then Pratyaksha is direct perception. If we use these three stages and we take it to the teachings of this third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we can see something incredibly interesting about the world. So what happens in the modern world? People engage in activity without taking responsibility, for example, procreation. So therefore, what do we have? We have unwanted population, right? So a soul takes birth enters into the womb, and that soul that entered the womb was not wanted. So then that living entity in the womb hears mom and dad thinking, I'm not sure if we should get, if we should have this baby. Why don't we get rid of the child? And that child has now been struck by this impression, I'm not wanted. And that causes, imagine if you felt that you were completely unwanted, would it cause a sense of peace or disturbance? It would cause one to have that deep disturbance. I was not wanted. And then we come into the world with this lack of peace. As Krishna is alluding to here, I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. People or entities who come into the world feeling their whole life that they were never wanted. And actually, that there was a possibility their own caregivers were considering, should we kill the child? Should we kill the child in the womb? And that sense of not being wanted, that sense of rejection, that sense of disturbance, that sense of not having peace plays out subtly throughout the person's entire life. Very profound, very, very profound. The importance of being an example, not just understanding the good thing that happens if we are a good example, but understanding that there's no middle ground. If I'm a bad example, I'm causing these negative ripple effects that I may not be aware of. E stands for example. And then Krishna will elaborate, right? So even if people are ignorant and they're attached, right? So verse 26, don't disrupt their mind, right? They're attached to fruitive work, but still carry on giving them the opportunity to work, but engage them in working in a spirit of devotion. That means adding Krishna. He should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual, again, the rung of the ladder, for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. That's the point. And then we quoted this verse in verse 27, this Prakriti Kriyamanani verse. It's very, very interesting. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Where we have this bewilderment, but the moment we engage in Krishna's service, that confusion starts to go, because we get purified by engaging. Right? And ultimately, what are we trying to do? Verse 30, Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, but without desire for profit and with no claim to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, act, fight. This is very interesting. This reminds us of this verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anya Bilasata Shunyam Gyana Karmadhanavritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttamam. Devotional service should be done in which way? It should be an activity, right? So engage in activity, done favorably, right? For Krishna's pleasure, right? So that surrender is also there for Krishna's pleasure, right? Free of the desire for karma or gyan. That means without desire for profit for ourselves, no claim of proprietorship, trying to get something for ourselves, but it's still an activity. We're still active. This is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, right? We do everything that we do, but we do it purely for Krishna's service. Right? And that's the beauty of this practice. And again, Krishna will talk about the importance of engaging in one's activities according to one's nature. And again, we can take that in the highest expression, our spiritual nature. It is the nature of the soul. Prabhupada was on a morning walk with the devotees, and it was in some place, and the weather was really cold. So he was walking, and they had these like small ponds where it was frozen. The surface of the pond was frozen. And as Prabhupada was walking by, he had his cane, and he would just smash the surface of the pond to crack the ice. And at a certain point, the devotees thought, you know what, we keep seeing Prabhupada do this. We should ask Prabhupada, why is he doing this? And so they asked Prabhupada, you know, why are you doing this? And Prabhupada said something very profound. Everything he says is profound. But this time, the profound thing that he said it's not the nature of the water to be hard like this, to be like ice. He said, similarly, it is not the natural state of the living entity to be in Maya. The nature of the soul is to surrender in loving devotional service to Krishna. Now, the last thing we'll touch upon, the last E. So we talked about Tyag, the rungs of the ladder, and then we spoke about example. The last E is the enemy. Okay? This is the enemy. Verse 37, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. That's the enemy. He goes on to say that this enemy is never satisfied. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. There's a beautiful meditation we can have here. If we want to engage in activities without being bewildered, all we need to do is to understand what is the ultimate effect of this activity. So when we are tempted to engage in lusty activities, we can think back to these verses and we can think, what will be the ultimate outcome? It says here, the ultimate outcome is that the person who gives into lust will be never satisfied. And that lust will burn like fire. It's actually a very violent, very harsh imagery. Burns like fire. Then Krishna will say where the lust hides, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge. That means the understanding about what will truly make us happy. So therefore, he will end this by saying, Arjuna, you have to curb this great symbol of sin. And he explains how we do it. Regulate the senses, right? Destroy the slayer of knowledge and self-realization. Then he'll give us this hierarchy that we touched upon. Senses are there. Higher is, well, then he actually talks about many levels. First, there's the external world, dull matter. Then he says the senses are superior to the external world of dull matter. Then he says the mind is higher than the senses, and the intelligence is still higher, and the soul is even higher. Right? So, in conclusion, if we know ourselves to be transcendental, Krishna is telling Arjuna, that implies knowledge, knowing. So by spiritual knowledge, right? O almighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, spiritual knowledge, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So in conclusion, there's a tremendous benefit and power just by us doing what we're doing, by us discussing, reading, contemplating spiritual books of Prabhupada every single day, because it will help us to do exactly this. Conquer the enemy, our one enemy, lust. So T stands for Tyag, renunciation, because Arjuna is trying to understand, should I not do my duty? Should I do it? R stands for the rungs of the ladder, understanding that there's a progression, that we let go of engaging in inactivity. We let go of engaging in immaterial activity. We engage in activities for Krishna. We go higher that way. That's the rungs of the ladder. E stands for example. If we don't act properly, we create unnecessary difficulties. If we act properly, we create tremendous benefit and reward for ourselves and other people. And the last E, enemy. By spiritual intelligence, by engaging in Krishna consciousness, by engaging in service, by engaging in spiritual understanding, we're able to conquer the enemy, which will stop us from moving forward. And engaging that spiritual intelligence allows us to be elevated to the higher levels of Krishna consciousness. So let me pause here. And I know that you wanted to do a quiz before we open up for questions and answers.
Yes, Prabhuji, but I think the quiz is relevant if you are displaying the slides which we sent you. But I don't think, yeah, that questions will be a little different. But anyway, it's related to third chapter, so I thought I'll do the quiz. Dear devotees, we'll do just 2 questions quiz as usual, what we are doing since last 2 days. So I'll give, so this is the first question, which is coming up on your screens. What was Arjuna confusing devotional service to? So inertia, sannyasa, ritualistic activities, detachment from family affairs. So hope you are able to see the quiz. I request devotees to participate. 13 of 31. One minute. I'll wait for 20 more seconds. 23 out of 31. Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end this here. So the answer is inertia. The correct answer is inertia. Only 17%, 4 of 23 answered correctly. Thank you so much. And
Can I just say something on that?
yes,
Just
yes.
remind everyone that was the first verse. Because Arjuna is saying, why are you asking me to fight in this ghastly warfare if intelligence is higher than fruitive work? So that's what it means by inertia, intelligence. I shouldn't do anything. That's what he was. Yeah.
One second. Are you able to see the second question? What impels one to commit sinful activities, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?
We can't see the question.
We
Oh.
can't see.
I don't know why it's not allowing me. Oh, I don't want to take more time. Sorry, I don't know why this is not launching.
Maybe just ask the question, then they could.
Yeah. What impels one to commit sinful activities, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? The choices are envious, anger, lust, confused mind. Devotees, please type the answer in the chat. I repeat the question. What impels one to commit sinful activities, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Envious, anger, lust, confused mind. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, the answer is lust. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prabhuji. So I'll end this here. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or realizations, you can please go ahead. And Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, you want to add something, please, you can do, Maharaj.
I'd like to ask one question. It seems obvious, but maybe for a further understanding of the principle, when Krishna uses the different ways of comparison between the senses, the mind, the intelligence, and then the soul, he uses the term higher. What does the term higher mean in relationship to what is being said?
Wow. Yeah, it's a very good question. Let me bring this up, and then we can try and share something. While it's loading, because my computer's notoriously slow. Okay, I think it's going to come.
Prabhuji, do you want me to share? What is the word?
I think mine is coming up. It's just that it's a little bit slow. So what we'll do is we'll look into the verse itself and what Prabhupada may say in the purport. So yeah, while it's loading, we'll just go along with that. So yes, this is the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's up on the screen now. Okay, thus knowing oneself to be no. So the last but one. Okay, the working senses are superior to dull matter. Actually, one thing can we get? Let me just close that. Yeah. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he the soul. My understanding, Maharaj, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's also the gradation in terms of that which is more gross to that which is more subtle. So the most subtle and refined, let's say element is actually the soul. These other elements, the intelligence, the mind, Dharmata, etc. These are more subtle. These are more gross relative to the soul being the real self in the hierarchy of the living entity, and these other things being more the different coverings that the living entity is encaged in. Of course, except Dharmata. Dharmata is just the external world. So that was what I understood in terms of higher or superior in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gradation seems to be, as you move forward, it goes from gross to subtle,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately it goes beyond subtle into the nature of spirit,
Yeah.
which is the highest. Yeah, that's a perfect answer.
Is anything you'd like to add in terms of any elaboration on that, or any other points that we should consider, Marge?
Well, you might mistakenly think when you read this verse that one is controlled by the other, and as the higher you go, the soul is the one that controls everything. But then you see that in the conditioned state, it's not like that. Sometimes the senses control the mind. Sometimes the mind overshadows the intelligence. So using that, it doesn't say it's more powerful or more influential. It seems like only the definition of subtlety, which moves closer to the spirit, is actually the understanding.
It's a great point.
We can mistakenly think that in terms of control.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the famous example that's given is that the senses are like the horses, right? So the analogy of the chariot. So the senses are like the horses, the reins are like the mind. The intelligence is meant to be the driver. The intelligence is meant to be the driver of the chariot who actually controls the reins of the mind, and through the mind controls the senses. And then the living entity is actually the passenger in the chariot. The chariot's the body, right? Well, forget about the chariot being the body, but the senses are the horses. But as Maharaj said, if the mind is too strong, actually what happens, and this is what happens in the conditioned life, is the mind is stronger than the intelligence. And therefore, actually, where the intelligence isn't leading us anywhere in the positive direction, rather, we're being pulled in completely, let's say, unproductive directions in life until we come to Krishna consciousness, and even within Krishna consciousness, to the extent that we actually are aligned, that the spiritual intelligence is aroused and controls the mind, which then controls the senses and directs us towards Krishna. So yeah, we have to move in the right direction.
In the realm of spirit or devotional service, there is a hierarchy of control here, but not in the conditioned state.
We need to get to that higher stage. Yeah.
Ultimately, the soul is the one that controls everything, but it's being controlled in the conditioned state by the mind and the intelligence and the senses. But when the soul is illuminated by its proper position in relationship to the Supreme Soul, which is the path of bhakti, then the soul is actually controlling everything, the mind, the senses, and everything, intelligence. So the hierarchy is also there in the spiritual sense, but not in the material sense. That makes sense?
Makes complete sense, Maharaj. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Sukava Mataji, please go ahead. You have a question.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to assembled devotees. Thank you so much for another powerful class, Prabhuji. It's amazing. And thank you, Guru Maharaj, for your little bit explanation. But please, can you explain a little bit more about the hierarchy in the spiritual and in the material? Because it's not really clear with me.
I think that's from Maharaj, I think.
Yeah, Guru Maharaj, please.
Well, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence functioning in the material world is shadow over the senses, mind, and intelligence of the soul. So they're an artificial state of operation which has nothing to do with the soul. But because the soul identifies with it, it becomes influenced by it. Therefore, ultimately, there is the material mind dissolves, and the material intelligence dissolves. The senses also dissolve when one reaches, liberation or freedom from material association. So these things are they're only shadows of actual reality. They're not. Because the soul has intelligence, the soul has senses, the soul has a mind. All of these are actually the reality of the definition of mind, intelligence, and senses. Material is the covering over it. Just like if you put a piece of cloth over something, you can't see that anymore. You just remove the cloth and then the object is there. The cloth is something that is covering it. So material, mind, senses, and intelligence are coverings, that's all. They have no reality in existence, and they dissolve. They completely are obliterated when one reaches pure spiritual consciousness. Then one acts out of the spiritual senses, material and spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence.
Okay. Yes, Gurmal, that makes sense now. Is it possible to ask one more question to Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, or shall I ask later on? Because there are two other hands raised as well.
Go ahead and ask Bhuta Bhavana.
Please, yeah. Please go ahead, Mataji.
All right, okay. Prabhuji, yeah, we as a practicing devotees try to control our mind and senses, but the lust is so powerful that even we are practicing Krishna consciousness, the lust enters there, and so many times we are expecting so much from our Krishna consciousness, like even simple example like service. We are attracted to some services more than the other ones. Mind just wants us to do that way. If we don't get, then again there is we feel bad about it and stuff like that. How to control that when we are practicing in Krishna consciousness? So I've heard before that the lust in Krishna consciousness is good, but not in material. But even that, I feel it's not quite good as well. So would you mind please explaining a little bit more how to overcome that?
Yeah. So Devye Shiguna Mai Mama Maya Duratya Mama Ibaye Prapadyante Maya Metam Durantite. Krishna says this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is very difficult to overcome. Then he goes on to say, but those who prapadyante, those who surrender unto me, mayam etam tarantite, he says they can overcome it very easily. So yes, the material energy, he says himself, is very difficult to overcome, but actually surrender to Krishna or bhakti is even more powerful. So yes, the first point is, yes, it's difficult. The material energy is difficult, but Krishna's words are, yes, it is difficult. My energy is difficult to overcome, but bhakti is stronger than the material energy. So by our surrender, and surrender is a process, right? There are 6 principles of surrender, and it comes as we practice. So that's the word that you use is really the key. We practice. So by the regular practice of anything, we actually improve in that particular area. So Mara just has already talked about how as we get to a higher stage where one comes to the point of pure Krishna consciousness, then one has a, the pure spirit and the pure senses, the pure mind, pure intelligence. So Cetodapanamarjanam, right? So Prabhupada would again and again talk about this. What we're actually doing is we're cleansing, we're cleaning, we're purifying. We're coming more and more back to our original nature. So it may be the case that in the beginning, we will not be perfect in our practice of Krishna consciousness. It may be the case that in the beginning, in the earlier stages, sometimes there'll be more of a wrestling with the mind than at other times. But as long as we keep going, as long as we keep practicing, and as long as we do it in the association of devotees with a mood of, the mood is always, we always try to see how we can improve our Krishna consciousness. You see, it's just like this. Different people are at the university. They're all studying and they're on the same course, but it doesn't mean that they're all going to be, they're all going to get the same qualification or the same grade when they graduate. In fact, some people won't even graduate. Why? It's not just big, it's one thing to be at the university, but then within that, within the student population of the university, how much are they doing the studying? Right? How intense is the study? How intense is the learning? How intense is the practice? What comes to mind is, when Dronacharya was going to test the Pandavas. So they put this model bird on the branch, right? And he was asking them to shoot. So one would come up, what can you see? I can see the tree. Dronacharya said, no, sit down. You're not qualified to shoot. The other one would come, can you see the tree? I can't see the tree. What can you see? I can see that bird. I can see the branch. Dronacharya said, sit down. Then when Arjuna came up finally, he said, can you see the tree? Dronacharya asked that question, can you see the tree? Arjuna said, I can't see the tree. He said, can you see the branch? He said, I can't see the branch. He said, can you see the body of the bird? Arjuna said, I can't even see the body of the bird. Dronacharya said to him, what can you see? He said, all I can see is the eye of the bird. And Dronacharya said to Arjuna, therefore you're qualified to shoot. So even within Krishna consciousness, it is a journey, but there's also the intensity of the practice. And that intensity of practice, more and more, I'm always trying to see we should always be trying to see, how can we improve? How can we improve? And we should also, that desire should also cause us to also inquire, how can I improve? So inquire from our spiritual master, how can I improve? What can I do differently? What do I need to give up? What do I need to change? And in that constant desire for improvement and that constant inquiry to improve, that's the expression of the intensity. So it's not just desire, it's the intensity of the desire to improve that will get us quickly to a higher stage of practice in Krishna consciousness. So that's how we do it. How we do it is by regular practice. How we do it is by being aware of where we're doing well, where we're not doing well. How we improve is by association. How we improve is by inquiring through association and then taking that instruction and building that into our practice. So our spiritual master says, you should work on this. Okay, I take that and now I'm going to work on that. Our association, if even the devotees we associate with, they'll see something within us that we could do better. And they'll point out, oh, I don't know if you realize, but you tend to do this, or have you thought about doing that? That's also something as an impetus. And then also our own reflection. We may look and think, you know what, my chanting could be better, right? Now, what can I do to improve my chanting? Oh, I can maybe go for morning program and chant with the devotees. Or my reading could be better. What could I do? I only read for 5 minutes, but I could actually read for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day. Okay, let me do that. And what happens is, Prabhupada writes this in one purport in the Bhagavad Gita as it is. He says, God helps those who help themselves. And in that same purport, Prabhupada gives the example of the bird who loses her eggs in the ocean. So then she actually asked, the ocean, please, can you give me back my eggs? And the ocean refuses to help. But she's so determined that she decides, I'm going to empty this ocean one beakful of water at a time, which is an impossible, mission. But she starts on that endeavor. But then what she does is, because she's so determined and she's doing everything that she can, Garuda, the Lord's bird carrier, sees her determination, but he's very powerful. So then he, seeing her determination, he decides to help. So he then says to the ocean, you either give her eggs back, or I myself will empty you. And this is the analogy of everything in our Krishna consciousness. If we make that sincere endeavor as much as possible, we will attract the help of Krishna, and it's usually through the aid of Krishna's associates, the pure devotees. They will then help us and see, this person's actually trying, let me help them to actually be successful in their endeavor.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your encouraging words, Prabhuji. It really, really helped.
But I'll defer to Maharaj to see if there's anything to add, any correction to what I said.
No, I mean, you just summed up the whole process of bhakti. It's endeavor and mercy. Without the endeavor, the mercy is not there. Or it's there in proportion to the endeavor. We make full endeavor, then full mercy comes. Yeyatam amvapanyate tam sataiva bhajami aham, Krishna says. Yeah. As you approach me, I reward you accordingly. We can't do it, but we can make the effort. That's bhakti. The bhakti is the effort.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Raj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to you, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, all devotees present. I'm not quite sure how to phrase my question, so I'm going to try and give a couple of very quick examples, because that will get the question across. Recently, we were in Radhadesh Mellows, and there were two things that I kind of like noticed, and we were having a conversation about. One of them was many devotees. Also, there's a large crowded, very crowded room. So many devotees just charge their way through the devotees and plot themselves on the front on a space that's the size of a postage stamp, knowing that all the devotees around them were like a wave move out to try and make themselves more comfortable. And the other thing was like in the prasad queue, like some devotees would queue out in the cold for a long time, and others would just jump the queue. And if there was a favorite item of prasadam that they particularly liked, they would come out with this like pot or container. It's like, give me more, give me more, give me more, fill up this container. So after we're having this conversation, and the devotees were saying, well, if I'm charging my way to the front, that's just showing my strong desire. You got to have that desire. It's this great saying, it's like a spiritual desire. And the same with prasadam, they're saying that's desire for something spiritual. So when is it something spiritual and when is it lust?
Wow, that's a very good question. I think I should defer to Maharaj first to answer that, because I think also I know you were at the Radhadesh Mellows. So would you like to share first?
You can't call it spiritual because it's at the expense of someone else. Where spiritual is not at the expense of someone else. It's beneficial for all.
Beautiful.
You can add to that.
I'm contemplating that because I think it's such a beautiful and clear and crystal clear, concise answer. So I'll just try and elaborate on whatever Maharaj just said, because he knows he has more realization. So yeah, I mean, we can do something, but we can also do it we can do the right thing sometimes with the wrong purpose. So devotees, we should take prasadam, right? We shouldn't take food which is not offered to Krishna. That's actually in this chapter that we were reading from. But again, anya bilasata shanyan gyana karmadana pritama nukulena Krishna nushilana bhakti uttama. Am I doing that activity for karma or gyan, or am I doing it? It's an activity for Krishna. It's an activity for Krishna done favorably. You see, so if we take that verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then as Maharaj has already elaborated, then the difficulty is it wasn't done favorably because it was done at the expense of other devotees. So that's where there was an issue in terms of how it was done. Yeah. So in that sense, it wasn't ideal.
It's lust. Love and lust are two opposite things. Love is for the benefit of others, for the benefit of, and lust is try to satisfy my own senses. If I satisfy my senses in Krishna consciousness, is that love? The idea is to satisfy Krishna's senses, and then your senses will be satisfied. Not the other way around.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Prabhupada talks about this one, these certain spiritualists, so-called spiritualists, they say, when you're satisfied and God is satisfied, that's how you understand God is satisfied. Which is really the reverse. That's putting ourselves in a position of superiority over the Lord.
Maharaj, but I think those devotees, they would say, well, I was satisfied because I got to the front, and I was satisfied because I got all my favorite prasadam.
Well, what do you think?
I think that they were upsetting a lot of other devotees. So, and I wasn't feel happy to do that, because even to upset one devotee, I thought would be painful. So to upset a whole bunch of them was a definite no.
Yeah, I was put in that situation also where I had to be very, very conscious of the fact that there were other people around, and they also had equal opportunities to participate. So it's not that we abuse or misuse or neglect or someone else in order to fulfill our own desire for some kind of preference in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada talks about in the material world, everyone is trying to push the other guy down. In the spiritual world, you're there trying to push the other person up. And we saw that at the Mellows too. There were people who would get up and give you their seat, not just me because of my position, but in general. They were doing that for other devotees because they had that mood that, yeah, I should give preference to another devotee over myself. I saw that also. That was there. That's Krishna consciousness. Oh, that's proper behavior in Krishna consciousness.
Should we go
Thank
to
you
another?
very much.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, you want to speak more on that?
I was going to say, should we go to another? I think there's someone else.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Balaji Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru and Gauranga. I have a question, Prabhu. So normally in one of the verse, it has been mentioned that we have to do work as a sacrifice to Vishnu. Otherwise, it will lead to bondage. So in this material world, early in the morning when we wake up, we do our chanting, we think of, Krishna, all that happens. Once the work starts, we keep forgetting because of too many activities, we are tied up with. So is it okay to think that, because Maya is influencing all the time, that for the whole day, I'm doing, all the work as a sacrifice to Vishnu? Is it okay to think that way, or for each and every activity we have to offer that as a sacrifice to Krishna?
We should actually see, we should be able to see how what we're doing is connected to Krishna consciousness. Ideally, ideally it's like this. Ideally, we would spiritualize our consciousness in the morning by our sadhana, right? What that will do is it will allow us to see everything that we do in the day in a way that's connected to Krishna. And then also, practically, Prabhupada would emphasize, if we're doing the work and we're offering the fruits to Krishna, that means we should be able to see that we're using the fruits of our work in Krishna's service. You see? So we would actually be using the Lakshmi that we gain from our work. We would be using it, for example, we'll be using that to go to Krishna conscious festivals and programs as much as we can. We'll be using it to make sure that when we buy the food, the boga is all offered to Krishna. We'll be using it to maintain the house, and then devotees are invited to the house for programs, so that, and we see the house, because we have deities, we see the house as Krishna's house. I'm the guest, it's his particular house, and I'm looking after the house in that way, you know? And then there are maybe other things that we can do. For example, it may be the case that while we are at work, some of the people that we associate with at work, we may be able to share certain things about Krishna consciousness with them. So we're engaging or spiritualizing our work that way. So there are many things that we can do where we can connect our work, but minimum, the least is that the fruits of our work is engaged in Krishna's service in some way. Another example is there may be things that we learn in our work. And while we're learning it, we're actually learning it thinking, I'm learning this so I can use this to help to spread Krishna consciousness, right? For example, let's say you're in a job and you're learning you're learning organization and management. So you're thinking, I'm learning this so I can help to organize the festivals or organize the retreats or organize classes in Krishna consciousness. So we should think broadly, but we should try to see directly or indirectly how what we're doing can be and is connected to Krishna. So there's more than one way to do that. It may even be, I know some devotees, and when it's their birthday or on festivals, they'll cook prasadam and they'll bring that prasadam and they'll distribute that in the workplace. So everyone is getting prasadam. That's another way that they can do it. So we should just be aware and meditate in that mood. How can I connect it? You know, and am I connecting it as much as I can? Because again, the more I do that, the more I'm spiritualizing that. As Maharaj said, the more I surrender, the more mercy I receive. That's what we want. We want as much mercy as we can possibly get. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Your question. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhuta Bhavana. Rishabh Prabhu is asking a question on chat.
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna. It seems that this chapter emphasizes knowledge. Can Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu explain how much important is to learn, study, and apply the knowledge to come to Madhya level and importance of that level?
Yeah, so I'm still looking at certain chapters in the book by Shiv Ram Maharaj called Sankalpa Kaumudi. And there's a chapter called Empowering the Intelligence. There's also a chapter called Taming the Mind. And what Maharaj does is he elaborates on what's called the Sankhya philosophy from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which explains how all the different material elements of creation come together, and also how that relates to the elements within our body. As we said and as is mentioned in this chapter, you know, the mind, intelligence, false ego, etc. So it is understood that by spiritualizing the intelligence, which comes when we regularly read and hear, not just from the scriptures actually, but also classes, right? Especially advanced devotees classes, when we come and we regularly do this. It's not just doing it, it's regular. Nasta Praeshu Abhadreshu Nityam. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? The regular attendance of the Bhagavatam. When we do all of these things on a regular basis, and when we do them with rapt attention, That's the other key factor. It's not just listening, it's listening with full attention. When we do these regularly, what it does is it spiritualizes the intelligence. And by the spiritualized intelligence, we are able to then control the mind. And through the controlled mind, we're able to control the senses. And if it's spiritual intelligence, we will direct the mind, intelligence, senses in Krishna's service. And that will help us to be fixed in Krishna consciousness, you know? And that stage when we are fixed to a strong degree, that is the Madhyam platform. That is the stage of Madhyam. And then from the Madhyam platform, then there is a chance to come to the stage of the Uttama platform. But we can't jump, we can't go from Kanishta to Uttama. So we want to engage in that devotional service, but with intelligence. Otherwise, what happens is, I've seen it happen actually. What happens is if we don't have deep understanding about why we're doing what we're doing, then we can be subjected to doubts. And even doubts which are unfounded and which don't have good basis. And then but from those doubts, we can actually become disengaged, or we can lose our strength of engagement in Krishna consciousness, and eventually we can leave our Krishna consciousness. You know? So it's not just important, it's essential. It's also essential because if we understand what we're doing, we understand why we're doing it, and we have deep conviction, then when we speak to other people, the conviction that we have is also transmitted to them. So it also has a role to play in the quality of our ability to share Krishna consciousness with other people. And of course, that is also another quality of a Madhyam. The Madhyams, Prabhupada says, they're the preachers. Now, anyone can preach and everyone should preach. But when he says the Madhyams are the preachers, it means they actually know how to do it effectively. Because what is it that Nectar of Instruction says? They can discriminate. So they can see who's envious. They make friendships with the devotees. They give Krishna consciousness to the innocent. They avoid the envious, right? So in terms of the subtle body, the intelligence is the function of discernment. It's the function of the subtle body which allows us to make healthy, wise discrimination, right? To see things in their proper position and then to act accordingly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I saw you. You wanted to share an additional piece, Rishabha.
Krishna. Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Thank you very much. One of the additional things, as you said, like the Madhya Adhikari, they discriminate because currently we can say, okay, we have a lot of devotees participating, but we are actually still majority of the devotees are Kanishta. So when we come to the some other kind of events, when we associate with the devotees, maybe we will see them doing different things that maybe they shouldn't. Maybe it's not actually yama and yama. It's like the first aspect of surrender to Krishna is to follow yama and yama, to understand what to follow, what to not to follow. And so if we are reading, if you're studying and we are actually trying to apply, we will discriminate for ourselves, that we will be able to actually go from the Kanishta level, even if we are in the association with Kanishtas. So I'm just seeing that this is like the only way how we can elevate ourselves, even though the people around us maybe are not endeavoring so much. We need to discriminate.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. There's two things. We can also advance by association of those who are more advanced than us. So actually that discrimination it will help us to understand and to seek out more advanced association. That's the first point. And the second thing I think to emphasize is that discrimination is always with compassion and humility. So it's just like a doctor. A doctor may see that different people have different stages of an illness, but he's always with a view of trying to see how to help and uplift the individuals. So it's a discrimination, but there's also a mood to that, Like Maharaj was talking about, earlier that, when people push in the line and so on, they can say it's Krishna conscious, but actually if they're doing it at the expense of another person, it's not actually pleasing to Krishna. So in the same way, this kind of discrimination or being able to evaluate is like the evaluation of a loving individual who wants to understand where they are and where other people are so that they can assist other people. The other thing is, I remember hearing this from my Guru Maharaj, that if one is actually more advanced, then even if they see something in another person which is not ideal, because they also have humility, they look to see how is that same quality present in me. You see? So it's always from a very humble space. So it's to see how can I also learn to see, oh, that's something I also need to work on, or how can I improve that in myself in order to help this other person. So it's always accompanied, that discrimination of a real madhyam is always accompanied by a mood of both compassion and humility. Yeah, and actually, when there's proper compassion and humility, then only one has real discrimination. So in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it's the 8th verse, chapter 13, when Krishna lists those elements which constitute knowledge, the first thing he says is amanitvam, which is humility. Yeah. So we can understand that is an integral element that is required for one to have proper evaluation. I hope that helps in terms of just answering your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. He said yes. So we have one more question by Sakshi Mataji. She's asking, Srila Prabhupada says all problems of this material nature is illusion. Even after knowing this fact, mind creates trouble. My question is, how do we train our mind to stop contemplating on falsy and negative assumptions of a particular situation? It multiplies 1,000 times during chanting and disturbs the sadhana.
Yeah. So that's really the question of how do we become Krishna conscious. The issue isn't that the issue isn't the fact that the mind creates the problems. The issue is the fact that we don't have realization of it. We hear it, we may accept it philosophically, but we haven't realized it. But the realization will come through purification. So there's not like a quick answer. We have to develop and cultivate our Krishna consciousness. But it's a fact that, well, first of all, it's definitely the case that the mind creates all the trouble, because it's how we see it. If I'm a spirit soul, then actually nothing can disturb me ultimately, right? Nothing can kill me ultimately. But because I identify with the mind, with the body, with the intelligence, that creates all the issues. So it's a question of realization. It's not a question of just philosophical knowledge. That's important, but it's a question of realization. Years ago, I was hearing this class. It was a really good class, and an analogy was given, and so many of us can relate to this. It's just like if you're in front of the television and you're watching a movie, or you're in a cinema and you're watching a movie, and there's a main character in the movie, and this character, they're walking home alone late one night, and then they get attacked. And because you identify with the character, then when they're being attacked by someone in the street at late night in the movie, then you start to feel scared, you start to feel horrified, and you feel uncomfortable, you feel disturbed. But it is a fact that what's happening is not happening to you. So the question is, why am I disturbed? I'm disturbed because I identified with the character in the film. That's why I'm disturbed. In the same way, we are not this body and mind. We're spirit soul. We're different from this material world, this dull matter. But we're disturbed by it. Why? Because due to ahankara, due to false identification, I think that I am this body. I think that I am this mind. I think that I am these upadhis, these different social positions. And because I identify with them, therefore I'm attached to them, and therefore I'm disturbed by whatever happens in that particular situation or relationship. So the only way out of it ultimately is to realize my real identity. So it's just like if you're in the movie and you're getting disturbed by everything that's happening to the main character, and then someone reminds you, it's just a film. That character is not you. You know, it's going to get better. Don't worry. It's not real. If I can be reminded that I'm not what I think I am, I'm not that character that I'm identifying with. And if I can live on that basis of being of being aware that I'm different from what I'm engaging in, if I can live continuously on that basis, which is actually the state of real Krishna consciousness, then I will no longer be disturbed, but it's a process and it's a practice. Because if I've been watching this film and identifying with the characters for a long, long time, it may take a while for me to realize, oh, that's just a movie. It may take a while for me to become re-identified with my true self. So we have to just continue on. But again, going back to what we said earlier, we can improve the intensity and the quality of our practice to get to that stage faster. So yeah, those are some thoughts.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hope that answers your question, Madhuri. Raj Prabhu. Prabhuji, can we take one more question? Almost 40 minutes past. Yeah, please, Raj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Prabhu, you were saying at the beginning of the class how we have to hear these messages again and again and again before it can penetrate inside and we can get the realization. And sometimes I feel like I don't want to wait for hundreds and hundreds and more times of hearing. I don't want to wait for hearing the messages for years, maybe decades. I want the realization. I want it, I want it, I want it now. And what would you advise?
Well, that's good. That means if one's desire is increasing, it means one's hearing is good. It's a good kind of hearing. And the other thing is, let's be very clear. It's not good. It's not black and white. It's not like it has to be for years. Otherwise, nothing. It's not like, you do it for years and then you get everything. And until you've done it for years, there's nothing of it. You don't get anything. It's a gradual realization in most cases, although in some special cases where people get special mercy, one can become Krishna conscious in a moment, Prabhupada says, right? So we should have the mood of Rupa Goswami. He has these prayers, Ashabandha prayers, hope against hope, right? So the mood should be both patience and enthusiasm. So the enthusiasm is what we give out. I cannot wait. I have to be Krishna conscious as soon as possible. I cannot wait a moment more to be fully Krishna conscious. So I'm fully enthusiastic to make all the endeavor. But then the patience is, I know that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And that's another aspect of being Krishna conscious. I know it depends upon his mercy to be perfected. So we should have both things. The other thing to bear in mind is, when we say it can take, it's a gradual process, we don't know how many years we've put in practice in our previous lives already. So just because it's a gradual process, it doesn't mean that we have to wait forever in this life. We may have done a lot of practice in our previous life as well. So when we get the result now, we don't understand. Yeah, you're getting the result now because you pull in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 lifetimes, 100 lifetimes in the past. So we don't know where we are. We don't know how much we've done in the past, but what we should think is, let me do the best I can in the present. That's the mood to have. So both humility, patience, and enthusiasm. We should practice Krishna consciousness with the mood, understanding, thinking that it depends upon my practice. I should do the very best that I can. And then we should also pray and understand that it ultimately depends on Krishna's mercy. But we should know that the two things are connected. Krishna's mercy is also in reciprocation with how eager we are to become Krishna conscious. And by the way, it doesn't just mean I'm eager now. He looks to see, does that desire stay with you, right? Because it's easy for someone to be on the class and think, yeah, I'm really excited about it. But are we excited are we excited 2 hours later? Or has the excitement died down? Oh yeah, it's nice, Krishna consciousness, but I'd rather do something else right now. Ultimately, how intensely we want Krishna is shown by how we live and how we practice and how we endeavor. That's how we can see what the reality of how much we want to be Krishna conscious is shown by how we live, how much of our activities we really dedicate to Krishna, you know? So sometimes devotees will think, I really want Krishna, but if you look at the lifestyle, they do lots of other things. They do a little bit of Krishna consciousness, but they do lots of other things, which means that they actually want other things as well. So the intensity hasn't become so strong. So it's something to reflect on.
Thank you very much. Sorry, can you remind me what were those prayers that you mentioned, the hope against hope?
Ashabandha, it's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.3.35.
1.3.35.
Bhuta Swami, yes.
Okay,
It begins, Na prema shravanadi bhakti apiva. That's the first line of that sentence, of that verse. Na prema shravanadi bhakti apiva. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, I have a follow-up on Raj Prabhu's question. Like for suppose if we have any spiritual desires or the desires to fulfill Maharaj's or spiritual master's instructions or anything like that. So as you said, one day we are very much fired up and next day we'll be a little slow. So, but the desire is there already in the mind. So will Krishna see that? And suppose if we can't fulfill that now, maybe later in future, it may be fulfilled. So, so practically we may not able to do it now, but the desire is still there for some years. So then will it happen, Prabhuji, like Krishna will see that?
Yes, Krishna does see that. But he sees, my Guru Maharaj said that Krishna responds to the sum total of our desires. So we may have a desire, but it may be like only 10% of the time. And we may have another desire 80% of the time or 90% of the time. So he looks at the whole thing, just like when you cook, you know? So there's different amounts of the ingredients in the cooking, you know? So he sees what's the overall flavor, you know, like that. So what we want to do is we should consider from our perspective, how can I cultivate that desire? Yeah. And even if, let's say we have a desire to be Krishna conscious, then Krishna will see how much are you, he'll see that desire, but he'll see in terms of how much we're acting on it now. So one may say, well, I can't do it so much because I've got all these other responsibilities, but you can always, Mamana Baba Madbhakto, even while I'm doing other activities, I can be thinking of Krishna. Even while I'm engaging in different things in the day, I can do it for his pleasure, you see? And he will look and see, whenever you have opportunity, what do you actually do with your time? You see? So someone can say, I've got a desire, but when they have the opportunity to do something more Krishna conscious, they do something else. So Krishna notices that, he says, right, okay, so you think you really have a strong desire, but when opportunities are there for you to serve or for you to be more Krishna conscious, you do something else. That means you don't desire it that much, you see? So it's okay. The point is, wherever we are, we want to try to improve on the desire, cultivate that desire. And it's done by actively engaging in service as much as we can, while taking care of the things that we have to take care of in this world. I'll give you one thing to think about. See, Krishna doesn't see how much we give him. You see? He doesn't see how much we give him. He sees how much we're holding back.
Yeah.
So someone comes to the temple and they give £1,000. Okay, they just give £1,000 as a donation at the temple. And they may think, you know what, I've given so much money to Krishna, right? Someone else comes to the temple and they gave £10 to Krishna, right? They donated £10. So you could look at it and you could say the person who came first, they gave more, right? And let's use this as an analogy for surrender. You could say the first person who came to the temple, they gave £1,000. Then you find out that that person is a multi-millionaire. So that £1,000 was not even 1% of what they could have given. Okay. The second person who came was actually homeless. They had hardly any money. Let's say that they had £20. No, let's say they had £15 in total to their name at that time and no other money. And they gave 10 of that 15. that means they gave 66% of what they had. So even though the second person seemed to have given less, actually, because it was a greater amount of what they had available, Krishna sees that they were more surrendered. You see? So the point is, Krishna knows what our genuine limitations are. And he sees of what you could have, of how much you can serve, can surrender, to what degree are you doing that at any stage in life, you know? So at different stages in life, we have more capability to surrender or less capability to surrender. And Krishna, he takes that into account of what you have available to you, how much are you actually giving? And he reciprocates accordingly. So that's, as your Guru Maharaj said, Yeya tamam prapadyante, tam sadeva bhajami aham mama vatmanuvatate manusya papasavashaha. As will surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So that's the way we can understand it.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, got it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Revati Mataji, she messaged me that she has a question.
Yes.
We'll take one more last question, Prabhuji. Revati Mataji, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to the Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you for the very wonderful class. Just a question is about endeavor and mercy. So in Krishna consciousness also, when we are doing an endeavor, so Prabhu, we should have that endeavor in a proper way, right? If not, like we'll not have the results of that endeavor. Sometimes like we don't have the discrimination, like, when we are endeavoring, like in doing an activities in, Krishna consciousness. So how should we develop that? We have to work according to our nature, do service according to our nature. So how should we develop that discrimination?
The discrimination comes naturally as we hear more, read more, and inquire more. And at any point in time, we should just do the best according to what we know and understand at that time. And Krishna will accept it because he sees, okay, this person is doing the best that they can at this time, based upon what they know, what they understand, etc. And then they'll improve because we'll keep hearing, we'll keep reading, we'll keep inquiring. And the next time when we do a service, we can do it at a higher standard because now we have more knowledge, realization, and insight. So the point is, Prabhupada said like this, he said, you preach according to your realization. So what you know at that point, you give the best of what you know at that time. But then also because someone keeps reading and hearing, next time they give a class on the same topic, they've got more understanding on that class, more understanding on that topic. So next time they'll give a better class because they've got more realization later on. But you can't give more than you have. Yeah. So there's two things. Whenever I serve, try to serve the best of my ability. And second, always try to keep learning and growing so that next time I serve, I can serve even better. That's the way to do it. But don't worry about what you don't have, but just try to give the best of what you have. And then one more practical thing is, if it's a specific service which requires a particular kind of understanding, and we've been given that service, then also inquire from other devotees to get the understanding, get the expertise, get the knowledge, get the insight that allows you to do your service better. So those two things together will make it all work.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful class and nice question answers. You patiently answered every question. Thank you so much.